Hi, folks. My name is Ben, and welcome to the very first episode of today's Misguided Mentors podcast. I'm super excited. What we're going to be focusing on with this podcast is helping people identify misguided mentors. We're going to be promoting ethical leadership, and we're going to be enhancing entrepreneurial awareness. So I'm super excited. I've actually had this idea for quite some time now and have had something get in the way of stopping me from getting this going. And so I'm super excited to kick off this new year by actually just implementing it. The new word for me this year is implementation. And this is just the start of one of many things that I have planned for this year. And I'm excited because this is something that's actually going to be helping people. Most of you who already follow my pages, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, which I haven't been very frequent on or very active on rather, you guys know what I'm about. I'm about calling out misguided mentors and all those things I just said. I'm really trying to change the sales and business and self-development space ethically and trying to help people be aware of the deception and the manipulation that's going on so that they can navigate this protected and they can kind of go in there with the right expectations of what type of environment they're getting themselves involved in so that they can navigate it appropriately. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of people out here that are getting deceived. We'll get into that in a little bit. First, I just want to kind of give you a little bit of future pacing, if you will, and let you guys know what I'm going to be focusing on with this first episode. So what I'm going to be doing is I wrote down some notes so I can follow this. But basically, I'm going to talk about what, how, who, and why. And then I'm probably going to talk a little bit about my story and why I'm even talking about this, why I'm qualified, and what the purpose is and all that good stuff. But we're going to talk about what this podcast is, what it's going to be, how we're going to do it, because it's not going to be necessarily about me. This is more of a group thing I'd like to look at it as. I want to pretty much grow this channel with your help. And I want to help people with your help. I can't do this by myself. And I'm going to need your guys' help. I'm going to need your guys' help to share it, push it, watch it so that it gets in front of the eyes of the right people at the right time so that they can make sure they don't get deceived and they don't make the bad decision. They don't make a costly mistake, whether it's in their personal life or their business. Because there's a lot of damage that's being done, a lot of businesses being destroyed and families getting destroyed, finances being devastated. There's a lot of damage being done here, and that's the whole purpose of this channel and why I'm so passionate about it. So that's what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. I'll get into that a little bit more detail here in a second. I'm going to talk about who this is for, who this is primarily going to be for, at least in my opinion. It could be for a variety of people or any people in general, but I think it's going to be for a list of people that I'm going to mention here in a little bit. And then again, I'm going to go back to why I'm even doing this, why I have an interest in this, what experiences I have in this, so on and so forth. So super excited. Like I said, it's been a while since I've done some consistent podcasting, and I haven't really had a decent setup like I got now. And so this is really exciting. I did some podcasting. My first introduction into podcasting was during COVID with my nephew, Danny, and we had a lot of fun. We did a lot of live streaming, and it was fun. And then he ended up leaving, and so I ran the podcast by myself and carried on for several months after that and required a lot of editing, and then eventually it just died down, and I burnt out, and it was just a lot of my time. And on top of that, I was running my own construction company that involved a lot of my attention, a lot of my work, and so I just couldn't seem to navigate that. I was in a full-time band, a lot of things that just prevented me from actually doing what I wanted to do with that podcast, but it was meant to be because with this particular podcast, today's Misguided Mentors, this is going to be very specific. There's a path, there's a clear path, there's a lot of clarity with what I want to do, how I want to do it, who I want to speak to, why. This is all laid out, and there's so much clarity. That's all I can put. That's the best way I can describe it. And so it makes me really excited to get this finally going and to finally get in front of you guys consistently and to help people. That's pretty much what I like doing. Out of all the things I like doing in my life, I love helping people in many different ways, and this is definitely one of those ways. So let's kick it off. Let's get going with this. Let's start off with the what. So I mentioned it in the intro here. This podcast is meant to identify and help people identify specifically, help them identify misguided mentors, self-serving entrepreneurs, as I describe it. All right. The other thing it's going to do is promote ethical leadership. All right. There's a lot of people out there in the self-development space that claim they're ethical, and some of them are for the most part. Some of them may not be. Some of them don't even know that they're treating people like shit. There's a lot of big claims out there, but what I see is very different from the claims they're making. And ethical leadership there's just not enough of it in business, in sales, or self-development, or coaching, or mentorship. Okay, and I want to change that. I want to bring light to what real ethical leadership looks like and how you should do that, how you can do that, and what to look for if someone claims that they operate that way. All right. The other thing is I want to enhance entrepreneurial awareness, which kind of dovetails into what I was just explaining. Is I want to help prepare people, whether you've already been going to networking events, whether you've been going to public speaking events, and been in some type of self-development matrix, as I call it, or if you're just new, you're thinking about getting involved with it. I want to prepare people for that. And there's a variety of ways I'm going to do that. And one of the best ways I can do that is by talking about this and sharing other people's stories. Sharing other people's stories is probably going to be the most impactful because I can talk all day, right? You guys can hear me talk all day, but there's a lot more credibility and validity when someone starts sharing their story. And then when you start hearing recurring stories, right? You start hearing some of the same stories with the same experiences, it becomes even more credible. And so that's really the focus and the direction I want to take this podcast is interviews. I want to hear from people. All right. So going back to the how we're going to do this, I'm going to be covering stories. I'm going to be covering topics that are usually coaching or mentorship related, or specific person, a scammer. I was scammed, and I'll get into that a little bit more. In my opinion, I was scammed. I guess I better be careful how I say that now that I'm starting my own channel. But in my opinion, I was scammed by one of the best, by one of the biggest dudes out there in the market right now in the self-development space in real estate. And so I'm going to be covering stuff like that, stories like that, people who've had similar experiences. And then I want to interview people, and I might figure out a way to, you don't even have to reveal yourself. Like a lot of people I've noticed are afraid to talk about their story for several reasons. Right? A lot of the stuff scams don't usually get talked about that much because people are embarrassed. They just want to forget about it. They continue to involve themselves with the organization, even knowing they're being scammed, just because of the community aspect, and they want to fit in. They're afraid of losing friends. They're afraid of never getting their ROI. They've already spent, $500,000. They've already spent $20,000, whatever. And they just want to get their money back somehow before they decide to separate. There's so many reasons why people don't share this. And so I want to provide a space for people who don't care about revealing themselves. They just want to be upfront and talk about their experience, one. And then I also want to create a space for people who I can protect their identity, whether it's turning off their camera, which is probably the easiest way, and just have them speak, or blurring out their face. Because I think it's more important to just get the story out there. People need to hear your story, so that you can help somebody by sharing your story if you have been scammed, if you've been deceived, manipulated, harassed, interrogated, shamed, bullied into doing business with one of these misguided mentors, whether it's a coaching program, a networking event, a public speaking type event where you were sold a dream, you were made a promise, and nothing ever happened from it. No one actually delivered on the thing that they said you were going to get out of the experience. I'd love to hear that story. That's what these interviews are going to be about. If you're one of the top people that have been doing this stuff, you've been speaking at events like me, you've been putting on programs, you've been selling courses. I want to hear from you guys as well. I've been on the dark side. I was that person. I was scamming people. And now, in order to see the light, I had to go through that darkness. And so I can easily juxtaposition what that looks like. And in doing that, I can see I can read energy very well. And so I want to help people with that. How can you identify that? All right. And so that's what this podcast is going to be about primarily. And there's enough people out there and enough stories and enough content to keep that going forever, for years. So with your help, with your guys' courage, with your guys' experience, we can do this. And I would encourage you to reach out to me. All right. Who is this for? In my opinion, this podcast is probably primarily going to be for entrepreneurs, ambitious people, people who are seeking coaching, mentorship. People are attending networking events, public speaking events. People are getting into the self-development matrix is what I call it. If you're just now getting into self-development, or if you've already been involved in it, this is going to be for you. I highly encourage you to pay attention, keep following this channel. I'm going to be talking to a lot of people who have either been on the receiving end of these type of experiences, and I'm going to be talking to people who speak at these events, and I'm even going to be talking to people who DJ these events. I have a lot of really good-hearted people that I'm connected with who are willing to talk about their experiences with this. And so I think there's going to be a lot of value on this podcast going forward. And I really want to encourage you guys to keep your eyes peeled for that. And especially if you're any one of those people I just mentioned or not, pay attention, because I promise you that there is a specific message for you if you're willing to be open to hearing it. And I'm almost willing to bet that something that someone says is going to resonate with you. An experience is going to connect with you in one way or another. And so, just keep your eyes peeled and stay connected with this channel, all right? The other thing, why? Why is there a need for this? Why am I doing this? Why am I wasting my time? And why this topic? These are great questions, all right? And so one thing is there's too many podcasts that are all the same. There's way too many of them right now, right? And this is another one, I guess. And so I wanted to make it very different. I wanted this podcast to be very different and probably the first of many podcasts. I want this to be, it's needed for people who join events and communities and are motivational driven, like motivational speaking events. I think there's just too much of the same stuff. All right. And it's old. And I'm burnt out, it's played out, and it's all about the same thing. And usually what I've noticed in my experience of the last 4+ years of speaking at events and going to a lot of events to hear people speak and networking and all that stuff, all that mumbo jumbo, everybody's just chasing money. Everybody is fake. Everybody's deceiving. Everybody this is what I like to say, and what I've noticed. Everybody is conceiving relationships on deception, and that's not real. That's not authentic. And it's funny because a lot of stuff that's being promoted in these events and spaces is authenticity, but what I've noticed is far from authentic. It's a lot of people putting on a facade, being fake, and caring about what other people think about them, and really just focusing on chasing money and building relationships with somebody just so they can get something from them at some point, acting like they care. I'm not even kidding, guys. If you've never been in this space yet, you're going to find out really quick by the stories I'm going to start to share with you. This is a real thing, and it needs to be talked about a lot more. So pay close attention. I'm going to be pulling back the curtain on these topics. I'm not scared. If you don't know me yet, you're about to know me really quick. I am not scared to talk about people, certain things, and certain topics. I really don't. You can try to sue me. You can do whatever you think you can do to me. It's more important for me to share my message, and that's what I'm going to do. And there's nothing that's going to stop me because I'm passionate about this and I actually care about people. And so I'm going to stay true to that by not letting anything stop me. All right? Mark my words. So again, going back to why I'm doing this. There needs to be someone or something or something or someone who actually cares about helping people and prepares them for this predatory atmosphere that is typically seen in the self-development space, right? There's not enough people. And so there needs to be someone that actually cares and is going against that narrative and against that. I'm going to be that person. I've already done that. I want to make sure the chat is up. So in case anybody chats on here, I can see their chat for now. But yeah, going back to what I said, why this is needed is because there's just not enough of, it's all the same shit. Everybody's just, all they're doing is the same thing. It's all about motivation, how to do business, how to chase money, network. Your network is your net worth. Those who care pay, or those who pay attention. Money seeks attention follows money. Money follows attention. All these stupid sayings, which I'll eventually talk about. There's so much I could talk about, which I do a lot and have on my Instagram, which I'm going to now bring to this platform in a more long form content. But it's just all fake, and there's not enough real. All right. I'm going to bring the realness to this, and I'm going to invite people to have interviews with me that are also real and not afraid to talk about the reality of what's actually going on in self-development, in sales, in business, in coaching, in mentorship. It's fake. All right. And so I'm not kidding. I'm pulling back the curtains on this stuff, and just watch and pay attention. If you haven't been already, and if you have not been following my Instagram, which seems to be the platform I've been most active on the last few years, you're going to find out very fast that I'm serious about this. I'm dead serious about this. And I'm more dead serious about helping people, which is why I'm so passionate about this. So super excited about this. Like I said, I've had this idea for quite some time now. Now, I've always said, I'm glad that I'm just starting now, because I've always said that, buying into everybody's narrative about procrastination kills ideas, procrastination is bad. I would say twice now, just in the last couple of days going into this new year and going over my goals and the things I want to accomplish this year, procrastination has actually helped me twice now. One, in this podcast, it's helped me realize, I've taken so much time doing it that now I actually realize what I'm going to be doing, how I'm going to be doing it, the topics I'm going to be talking about. I got a little more familiar with the functionality of the platforms I'm going to be using. It actually helped me. So procrastination actually helped me. It also helped me with my third book I'm writing, not to plug my books or anything right now. But there's a third book I'm writing. It's also going to be called Today's Misguided Mentors, just like this podcast. And I'm going to be talking a lot about the stuff I'm going to put in that book on here. And the procrastination has helped me with that book, because the first book I just pumped out, The Misguided Mentor, was the first book I wrote. And I wish I would have taken some more time. It's still a great book, but I wish I would have took more time. And so now this third book, I've taken more time on it. I went back and I started reading some of the first chapters, prologue, things like that. And I realized, wow, I don't want that to sound like that. I want to change that a little bit. And so procrastination helped me twice this year so far. So procrastination is not always bad. I've noticed that. So don't be too fooled about that. Don't beat yourself up if you procrastinate on something and it seemed like a great idea, because it just might have been the best course of action for you. So I hope I've made this very clear on what this is about. What this podcast is going to be about, what it's geared towards, all those things I covered, the what, the how, the who, the why. I wanted to make sure I covered all of that, just so there's a lot of clarity for everybody that wants to be a part of this, wants to be on board, likes to hear people talk about this. There's just not enough people talking about this. So again, going back to the why, there is simply not enough of it. There's too many groups, too many coaches, too many mentors, too many public speaking events that are all the same. And I'm so burnt out on going to these things, which is why I'm very selective. It's because of this, I'm very selective on the type of things I get involved with and the type of people I also get involved with. Very, very selective. And even then, if I decide to go to a networking event, if I decide to speak at someone's public speaking event, if I decide to get involved with someone, I'm very protected, very aware, and very, I'm in tune with energy and reading that energy and feeling like, is this person actually, what is he here for? Why am I here? I mean, I know why I'm here. And so I guess knowing yourself is a big part of what's going to be talked about. I imagine, if I had to take a guess, knowing yourself is going to be probably a topic that comes up quite a bit, because I can honestly say that with my experience and, me being scammed, it primarily came because I invited it by not knowing myself completely. And I'll get into that here in a little bit. Right now, actually, it's been about 20 minutes now, so I think this might be a good time to jump into my story a little bit. So I wanted to kind of just show you guys some pictures of me, so you can really get some context and why I'm so. It's going to pretty much help you understand why mentorship and I'm so passionate about that topic, and it's going to kind of give you context in how I ended up from where I was to where I am now, and how mentorship and getting scammed and being the person I am, focusing on ethical leadership, is kind of the arching, transcending of my story. So let me make sure I don't mess this up, because like I said, I spent a little bit of time trying to navigate this functionality. So I want to show you guys a picture of me, a couple pictures of me. So check this out. That's me when I was 11 years old on the left-hand side. And I think on the right-hand side, that's a picture of me about almost 3 years ago now. And I made this post a while ago. Obviously, you can still see a bunch of 10X merch on me, which I will explain here pretty soon. But on the left-hand side, I'm an 11-year-old boy. I'm wearing a bunch of red because I was a little wannabe gangbanger. I grew up in some of the worst neighborhoods, and this photo is a clear example. Matter of fact, this picture was right before I went into a foster home. So without going into a huge backstory, my dad pretty much split when I was 3 years old, and before he did that, he abused my entire family in several different ways. And so I was left without kind of guidance in my life from a father figure. And so I got that from the streets. I got that, from hanging out with the wrong people, people that actually didn't have my best interest. And so what happened was I started victimizing people. I started doing things that ended me up in foster homes, juvenile detention centers quite regularly. I made a lot of bad choices back then. And it's crazy to think now, my daughter's 12 years old, and to look at her now and look at this picture of me and think that, wow, I was actually doing all of that at this age. I was smoking weed already at that age. It was terrible, guys. So I went from there, and I'm showing these two pictures because I went from having terrible guidance and terrible mentorship back then. And then I even went into my business life with misguidance and following the wrong business mentor. So that's why I'm showing you this. It's very important to understand that, the mentorship I got was, it trickled and pretty much carried throughout my entire life. So that's that picture. And so I want to go back to what I was saying earlier. The reason I have experience in scams and misguided mentors and coaches was because I was one myself. And this is a picture of me and Grant Cardone. Grant Cardone was my mentor for several years. I was a certified 10X business coach for his organization. And I pretty much breathed and lived and promoted 10X constantly. And this is the individual I looked up to. Unfortunately, I found out that, and again, this is all my opinion. I guess I'll have to say that so that I'm not really necessarily worried about him trying to sue me. You guys, if you've ever followed me already, you're going to know that I've already called him out quite a bit and very outspoken about it. But in my opinion, I was definitely scammed. Spent a couple, almost $250,000 going to his events, trying to, get in proximity, networking, taking courses, you name it. I've done it all. I've even put on a 10X business boot camp for him. Every time I'd go on stage, I'd be promoting Grant Cardone and me. I was pretty much just engrossed in this whole 10X thing. And so that's why you see, and I just leave all these pictures up on my Facebook because it's a nice way to look at my journey. You know what I mean? Obviously, this is not who I am now, and I'm very detached from this organization, and I've removed myself voluntarily. But it's a big part of my journey on how I realized there's a huge need for this. I even got my daughter involved with this. As you can see, my truck is branded out with 10X and Grant Cardone. I was really brainwashed, guys. And so I wanted to show you guys that so you got a good understanding of why I am so passionate about this. I didn't realize this. So when I came across and was introduced Grant Cardone's content, it was the 10X rulebook, which one of these episodes I'll probably just break down. I just happened to find a 10X rulebook in this house, even after getting rid of like the 50 I had left last year. But basically, I got introduced to him during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. And at that time, that ended up being my best year in my construction company. For those of you who don't know, I was a carpenter. I specialize in glass glazed sunrooms and conservatories. And I did a lot of outdoor living improvement, like patio covers and decks and handrails and a lot of power screens and retractable awnings. I did a lot of high-end outdoor living improvement. I did that for 12 years. I worked for one company for 10, and then I jumped into a different organization for a couple of years. And then once that didn't work out, I started all over, and that's when I started my own company that's been running for almost 7 years now. And so during the pandemic, I had already been in business for a few years and was doing pretty good. But then that's when this all came about. And I just had a little bit of fear and doubt and uncertainty, like much of the entire world had, right? The entire world was in a state of shock and uncertainty. All businesses were closed. And so it just took that little bit of doubt in me for me to adopt Grant's mindset and to think that I was lacking, that I was being average, that I could do more, I had more potential, I was living under my potential, I needed to invest in myself. All these narratives just really started invading into my space. And I guess I will also bring this up now that I'm talking about it. One of the things I have a suspicion this podcast is going to be covering is cult-like mentalities, cult-like communities, and how cults are very relative to these mentors and these coaches and their teams and their organizations. Found out later that Grant Cardone was a Scientologist, and the entire 3 years I was with his organization, I did not know that. So it's and then once I figured out what Scientology was, I realized that I was actually being turned into a Scientologist without even knowing it. And that entire organization is modeled and mimicked after Scientology to the T. So it's just repackaged. And so my mind was blown. And so now I'm starting to get interested in cults and stuff like that and realize, like, holy shit, I was in a cult. Holy shit, I was being brainwashed and manipulated, and I got sucked into something. Wow, this is all making sense. So I started connecting the dots. And, I had a whole spiritual thing happen to me that brought me into that space of clarity and realized what I was actually involved in, which is what triggered the light bulb to go off for me to voluntarily end up leaving that organization. And when I did it, I got loud about it. And so I let people know. I let Grant and them know. I tried reaching out to the team. Obviously, everybody started ghosting me and didn't want to confront me because that's just apparently that's how Scientology works, and most cults work that way. Once you cut off from them, they cut you off. Like once you let them know you're not with their program, you're not with what they're trying to, you're not trying to buy what they're selling, and literally buy what they're selling, they will cut you off and you will not be a part of them anymore. They're going to stop reaching out to you. They're going to pretty much block you. And that's exactly what happened to me. So there's so much to talk about when we're talking about coaching, mentorship, cults, self-development, public speaking, the atmospheres. There's a lot of things that are going on that nobody's talking about. And so the whole intention of this is to start bringing light to the things that are not being talked about, and talk about the uncomfortable things that people are embarrassed about. If you've ever watched like a cult documentary or any type of people talking about a cult they're in, it's uncomfortable. It's not fun. Most times they're embarrassed sometimes, depending on the person and how good they are and how they're sitting with themselves, how they feel about themselves. Thankfully, I've been brought into a space of confidence humility, no shame, and so I can I can easily talk about my experience and not feel anything about it, but compassion actually and empathy, even for myself and other people that are in it. But I'm not ashamed. I'm not embarrassed, because I realized after going through that experience, several years of spitting out thousands, tens and thousands, hundreds and thousands of dollars of my hard-earned money that I earned by growing my business with these organizations, I realized it can happen to the best of people. Because when I got into those rooms, small and big, I seen a lot of high-profile people, a lot of millionaires and billionaires, at least proclaimed billionaires, also drinking the same Kool-Aid, also glorifying the same people, also regurgitating a lot of the same sayings, and also adopting Grant Cardone's mindset, this person's mindset, that person's mindset. It's a very real thing that's going on right now, guys. And it doesn't just happen to weak people. It doesn't just happen to whatever person might think dumb people. It can happen to the best. It can happen to smart people, intelligent people, successful people. I've seen it. I've watched it. And I know it's a very real thing. So I'm happy to talk about this topic in so many different aspects. So I didn't want to get too much into my story, but I did want to just touch base on that and get that out of the way, because going forward, I would really like to do more interviews. Ideally, interviews is kind of going to be the path for me on podcasting for this podcast. And so if you know anybody, or if you have a similar story, and you want to chat about it, like I said, I'm trying to create a space where people can be anonymous, or if they just want to freely come on and talk about their story or experience, or, whether you're a consumer or you're a player, you speak at events, you DJ events, you do anything like that. You've been in the room, you've paid for tickets, whatever, or even locally, like just in your local area, you join some networking events and you've noticed some things, or whatever, I don't care if it's Amway. I don't care if it's Amway. I don't care if it's this, anything cult related. Reach out to me. I'd love to hear your story. And more specifically, it's not even me that wants to hear your story. I'd love to share your story with other people so they can hear it, because ultimately this podcast is going to be geared on helping people. That is what this is ultimately about. This has nothing to do with me. I'm just a tool in this process, and I'm just a platform to help people get that story so that the story can reach the right people's ears at the right time. I know this works because I've been publicly talking about my opinions on this and my story and my thoughts on certain things and certain people. And I've had so many people, I've jumped on so many other people's podcasts talking about this stuff. And I've had so many random people reach out to me, sharing some of the most heartbreaking stories with me and some of the most upsetting scenarios that they've went through, similar to mine, worse than mine. I've heard it. So I've been blown away and shocked and unpleasantly surprised with some of the stories I've heard from people being scammed, ripped off, their 401ks being ripped off, their home equity, they're being scammed out of their home equity to invest. Just the worst type of stories. Some of these stories almost all of them actually were directly related to Grant Cardone, just because, obviously I talk about him quite a bit. But I don't want this to be a channel about him. This is just my experience in the self-development space and how, my opinion, I was scammed. And I think it's happened to a lot of people. And I was taken advantage of. I was preyed on. And this is happening to a lot of people. So I don't want anybody to be scared to talk about that. More specifically, I don't want people to be scared to admit that. I can see a lot of people. Most people don't know it when they're in a cult. If they're in a cult, they don't know it while they're in it. Right? I had people tell me, like, dude, you are in a cult. I had some family members telling me I was in a cult several years back. Like, you're in a cult, man. And I did not hear them. Like, not only could I not hear them, but I actively was blocking that out. It's such a weird thing that goes on, because you don't want to believe that. You don't want to believe that you're being brainwashed, and you think it's not even that you don't want to believe it. It's that when you adopt someone else's thoughts and you don't think for yourself, you really don't leave room to accept other people's thoughts, and you don't think for yourself. It's crazy. And I'll say this, I've always said this quite frequently in the last year. This is the way you can tell that someone is a good mentor or a good coach or a good leader. Good leaders will promote and encourage you to think for yourself. They will not frame something in such a way that you need to seek them for success. They won't frame stuff in a way that you're doing things wrong. That it's all like a great leader, a great mentor, and a great coach is always going to encourage you to seek the answers and the truth and the tools within you, because we all have it. We just need to tap into it. There's nothing I have. There's nothing that Grant or whoever you think has the answers to what you're doing. When you start thinking that, choking. When you start thinking that, you're going to start finding yourself going down a dark path, and you're going to start becoming a person that you never intended to be. And I'm really confident that you're going to end up losing yourself, unfortunately, which happened to me. And so, like I said, I have no shame talking about this, because I think it's important for me to be very vulnerable about this. In order to help people, you got to get vulnerable. Like, that's just the way it is. And there's a lot of people out here that claim that they care about people in the self-development space, and leaders that claim they care about people. But if you just feel that energy and you pay attention when you're interacting with them or their organization, you can tell very, very quickly if they just want your money. You can tell if they're a giver or if they're a taker. Read that energy. Your intuition, your conscience is telling you the right thing. A lot of us ignore it sometimes, and unfortunately, if you just don't know yourself well enough, you will ignore those red flags, and you will not lean into that good energy that is already within you. So yeah, we're going down a deeper path right now, but that's why I'm so passionate about this, because this topic can take us down different paths. And so I have a feeling we're going to be talking about spirituality. Maybe we're going to be talking about intuition and conscience, cults, self-development, unethical leaders. It's going to really open up an avenue for people to talk about things that just isn't being talked about quite enough. And I'm excited for that, because like I said, in order for there to be true help, in order for people to actually help others, there's got to be some vulnerability. And so I invite you to, like I said, I'm encouraging courage in people, and I'm encouraging vulnerability. So reach out to me. Like I said, if you know anybody, or if you yourself would like to chat about this, or and I don't even have to bring you on an interview. Just reach out to me at any time, and I'd love to chat with you about your experience, your story, and anything that you think would be valuable to share with me. All right. I think that's pretty much it. I think we talked about quite a bit here. This has been a great intro. I'm super excited. By the way, I have not figured out a hard set schedule for this, meaning I don't know which days I'm going to regularly be doing the podcast. So sometimes I'm just going to be hopping on like I am right now, and I'm just going to be kind of pumping out whatever is on my mind. And, I'm not going to overthink it too much. When we get into doing interviews with people, that's kind of where I'll start taking it a little bit more methodically and a little more professionally as far as structuring interviews and calls, which I love doing. I love having conversations. If you guys didn't know that about me now, if you've never seen me talk on a podcast, I like conversations. I love bantering with people. I love dialogue, and I like provoking thoughts, positive thoughts within people, challenging thoughts within people. And so I really, really am excited for this channel to turn into that, which is exactly what's going to happen. So stay tuned. Keep your eyes peeled. Share this if you think someone would like to see this, or would dig anything that I'm talking about or what's to come. Share this, because like I said, with your help and your support, I ain't going to do this by myself. I can't. And so it's going to involve people seeing the value in this, if they do, and if they do, sharing it and getting it in front of the eyes of other people so that it reaches the right people at the right time. So with that said, I'm going to jump on here. I hope you guys enjoyed this first episode, and I'm really excited. Stay tuned for the schedule too. Eventually here, I'm going to tighten up the schedule. I'm going to, at least do one a week. And so I'm probably going to do more than that. It just depends on nothing, how I feel, I guess. So anyways, keep your eyes peeled. I appreciate everybody's support. With that said, I will check in with you next time on today's Misguided Mentors. All right.